Ara stood on the side of the empty road, her clothes slightly wet from the soft evening rain. The sky was turning darker, but she didn't move. She kept her eyes on the phone in her hand, staring at the strange message she had received only 10 minutes ago. If you want the truth, come alone. No name. No explanation. No second message. Just those 6 words, and they were enough to shake her entire world. Anyone watching her from a distance would think she was just another girl waiting for a bus. But inside her chest, a storm was rising. Ara had spent months trying to rebuild her life, trying to forget the man who once promised her a forever, and then disappeared like a ghost. She thought she had finally learned to breathe again. But now the past was calling her back. A cold breeze touched her face. She gently closed her eyes and whispered, "Why now? Why after everything?" Ara wasn't the type of person who liked drama or trouble. She believed in simple happiness, simple love, and simple dreams. When she met Zayn, she thought God had finally given her someone who understood her heart. But fate had other plans, dark, painful, and confusing. She looked around. The road was quiet. A stray dog walked past her, shaking off the rain. A small shopkeeper pulled down the metal shutter for the night. Everything looked normal, except for Ara's trembling hands. Her fingers brushed over a silver ring she kept tied to a small chain around her neck. She wore it every day, even though she never talked about it. It was the only memory she had left of Zayn. Her mind drifted back to the first time Zayn gave her the ring, to the promises he made, to the laughter they shared. She remembered how he used to say, "Ara, no matter what happens, I will always choose you." But he didn't choose her. He left. No message. No explanation. No goodbye. And Ara waited for months, dying inside a little more every day. When people asked what happened, she would only smile and say, life just works in strange ways." She never blamed him in front of anyone, but inside her heart, she was fighting a silent war, a war between love and betrayal, hope and heartbreak. Tonight, that war returned. A black car passed by her, splashing water on the road. The sound brought her back to the present. She checked her phone again. No new notifications. Most people would ignore such a strange message. But Ara wasn't most people. She knew that sometimes the universe sends the hardest truths in the simplest ways. And deep inside, she felt that somewhere behind this message, Zayn's shadow existed. Her legs felt heavy, but she forced herself to move. She started walking toward the old cafe, the same cafe mentioned in the message. It was the place where she and Zayn had their first date. The place where she first realized she was in love. The place where everything began. Every step she took felt like walking through fog. Her heartbeat echoed in her ears. She didn't know what she would find there: answers, lies, danger, or something she wasn't ready to face. The streets grew quieter as she went deeper into the old part of the town. The lights were dimmer. The air felt colder. She wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. Ara was not weak. People mistook her kindness for weakness, but the truth was different. She had survived heartbreak that could have destroyed her completely. She had taught herself to wake up each morning, to smile at strangers, to pretend life was normal even when her soul felt empty. But tonight, her strength felt thin. Her courage felt borrowed. Her heart felt like glass. When she reached the corner of the street where the cafe stood, she stopped again. The small building had changed. The once bright signboard was now rusted. The windows were dusty. It looked abandoned, almost forgotten. Just like her forgotten. Ara stepped closer. The sound of her footsteps echoed on the wet ground. Through the window, she could see a single light inside. Just one. Someone was waiting. Her breathing slowed. Her hand reached for the door handle, but she froze. A question whispered in her mind. What if the truth hurts more than the lies? But she already knew the answer. It didn't matter. She needed closure. She needed peace. She needed to know why the man who loved her so deeply walked out of her life without a single word. Ara closed her eyes, took a deep breath, and finally pushed the door. The small bell above the door rang softly. Inside, the cafe smelled old, like dust and memories. A single bulb hung from the ceiling. And in the far corner, a man sat with his back to her. It wasn't Zayn. She could tell instantly. But the man stood up slowly, like he had been waiting for her for a long time. Ara, he asked quietly. Her heart stopped for a second. He knew her name. She stepped forward carefully. Who are you? And why did you call me here? The man looked at her with serious eyes that carried a truth she wasn't ready to hear. I'm Harris, he said. Zayn's cousin. And I know what really happened. The war inside Ara's heart exploded again. The truth was finally here, but it came in a form she never expected. Ara felt her throat tighten as she looked at the man standing before her. Harris. She had heard this name once or twice in passing when Zayn talked about his family, but she had never met him. She didn't know if she should trust him, not yet, not until she knew why he called her here. Harris pulled out the chair in front of him, gently, almost respectfully. You should sit, he said softly. There's a lot you need to know. Ara didn't sit. Not yet. She kept her hands folded tightly against her chest, holding the silver ring through her shirt. It had become her shield, her comfort, her only piece of Zayn that had stayed. Tell me why I'm here, she said, trying to keep her voice strong. Harris let out a slow breath. He looked tired, like someone who had been carrying a heavy burden for too long. You're here because Zayn didn't want to hurt you. He wanted to protect you. Ara flinched. Protect her? The same man who left without a word? Her chest burned. If he wanted to protect me, he should have stayed. Or at least said goodbye. Harris lowered his eyes. He couldn't. The words hit her like a slap. What do you mean he couldn't? For a moment, Harris stayed silent. The cafe was completely quiet, except for the buzzing sound of the old bulb above them. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the window. Finally, Harris spoke. There are things Zayn hid from you. Things he didn't want you to see. Things he didn't want you to suffer with. Ara sat down slowly. Her legs felt weak. Harris continued, you think he left you suddenly, but the truth is, he was fighting a battle long before he met you. Ara frowned. What kind of battle? Harris looked directly into her eyes and Ara saw it. The pain. The sadness. The guilt. Zayn was sick, Ara. The words were simple, but they crashed into her like thunder. Ara's breath caught. Sick. Zayn. Her mind refused to believe it. No, she whispered. That can't be true. He was always full of energy. He was always laughing. He pretended, Harris said quietly. He pretended because he didn't want you to see him weak. He didn't want your dreams to break because of him. Ara shook her head. Her fingers trembled over the ring. He told me everything. He never hid anything from me. Harris swallowed hard. He hid this. The cafe felt colder. The wall seemed to close in. Ara tried to breathe, but her chest felt tight, like someone had placed a heavy stone on it. What kind of sickness, she finally managed to ask. A rare blood condition, Harris explained. It was getting worse. The doctors said he didn't have much time. And Harris paused, voice cracking a little, he refused to make you suffer through it. Ara felt the floor move beneath her. Her mind spun with memories, Zayn smiling, Zayn teasing her, Zayn holding her hand tightly, Zayn promising her a future. Was all of that just him pretending to be strong? Her eyes filled with tears. Not loud tears. Silent ones that fall slowly, painfully. If he loved me, he should have let me stay, she whispered. I would have taken care of him. I would have fought for him. Harris looked at her with deep sympathy. He knew you would. And that's why he left. He didn't want your life to stop because of him. Ara wiped her tears roughly, angry at how helpless she felt. He didn't trust me. That's what it means. That's not true, Harris said quickly. He trusted you more than anyone. But he also feared more than anyone. He feared being the reason you stopped living your own life. Ara leaned back in the chair, her hands covering her face. Her heart was breaking all over again, but this pain was different. It wasn't the pain of betrayal. It was the pain of knowing someone loved you too much, and still pushed you away. Harris reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folded paper. He placed it gently on the table. What is that? Ara asked, her voice shaking. A letter, Harris said. Zayn wrote it for you. He planned to give it to you himself, but he never got the chance. Ara froze. A letter? Written for her? By the man she loved, the man she thought abandoned her? Her fingers hovered over the paper, scared to touch it. It felt like the entire world had paused, waiting for her next move. Harris looked at her with soft eyes. He wanted you to know the truth. He wanted you to forgive him, even if he wasn't here to hear it. Ara felt her chest tighten painfully. The letter felt heavy even before she picked it up, heavy with secrets, heavy with love, heavy with everything she tried to forget. She whispered, "Why are you telling me all this now?" "Because Zayn made me promise," Harris replied. He said, "When the time is right, you must tell Ara everything." And tonight he looked away, tears in his own eyes. Tonight felt right. Ara didn't know if it was right. All she knew was that her world had changed again in one night, in one message, in one truth. Her heart was breaking, but somehow, it also felt like a small part of it was being healed. She held the letter tightly in her hands, afraid and hopeful at the same time. Harris whispered one last thing. Ara, this is only the beginning. There's more you need to know. Ara's fingers trembled as she unfolded the letter. The paper was slightly damp from her hands, but the words were still clear. She could feel Zayn's presence in every carefully written line, as if he had reached across time just to speak to her. The cafe seemed quieter now. Even the soft hum of the old bulb above them felt like it was holding its breath. Outside, the rain had slowed to gentle drops, but the world still felt heavy, like it was waiting for something to happen. Harris watched her closely, not wanting to disturb her, yet knowing she needed guidance through the storm of emotions coming her way. Ara began to read. Ara, if you're reading this, it means I didn't win the fight. I fought every day to stay strong, to make it to the life I wanted with you. But fate has different plans. I'm sorry for the silence. I'm sorry for the pain. But I want you to know everything I did was because I loved you. Please, live. Smile. Love again. Don't let my absence take away your happiness. Her hands shook as tears ran down her cheeks. The words that once might have been just ink on paper suddenly felt alive. Every sentence carried his voice, his warmth, and even his regret. Ara lowered the letter, her chest heaving. For the first time in months, the anger she had carried against Zayn felt misplaced. He had not abandoned her. He had sacrificed. And the truth of his struggle hit her like a wave, washing over her in pain, grief, and awe all at once. Harris cleared his throat softly. I told you the truth, but there's one more thing. You need to hear it from me, too. Ara looked at him, her eyes red, her lips quivering. What more is there? Harris took a deep breath. Zayn wanted to see you one last time. But he couldn't. His condition became worse faster than anyone expected. He asked me to make sure you get the letter and to tell you the truth about everything. Ara's heart pounded. One last time, and he didn't. Her voice cracked. Why? Why didn't he even say goodbye? He couldn't bear to see your tears, Harris replied gently. He thought leaving quietly would spare you the pain of watching him suffer, and eventually leave you. It was his way of protecting your heart. Ara's mind spun. She wanted to scream, to cry, to hit something, anything. But instead, she sat frozen, feeling the weight of grief mixed with the smallest spark of understanding. Why now, she whispered finally. Why after all this time did you bring me here? Why not sooner? Harris hesitated. Because you weren't ready. Some truths, some pain, need the right moment. Zayn wanted you to live your life fully before you learned what really happened. And now, you're ready. Ara looked back at the letter. She felt as though the words were a bridge between her past and a life she didn't yet know she could have. But even with that knowledge, she felt lost. The memories of Zayn's laughter, his promises, and their shared dreams pulled at her heart, twisting it with longing. Harris saw the storm in her eyes and took a careful step closer. I know it hurts. I know it feels like your whole world just fell apart. But Ara, this pain also carries something important. Love like this, it doesn't just vanish. It shapes you. It makes you stronger. Ara wiped her tears and whispered, almost to herself, stronger, how? You survived him leaving without answers, Harris said. You survived months of emptiness and loneliness. You still wake up every morning. You still breathe. You still carry hope inside you. That's strength, Ara. That's why he wanted you to live. And now, you can take what he left behind, his love, his lessons, his memory, and turn it into something beautiful. Ara's gaze shifted to Harris. For the first time, she saw him not as a stranger, but as someone who carried pieces of Zayn's soul with him. He had been silent for months, but now he was the messenger of truths she needed. Harris leaned slightly closer. There's one more thing, Ara. Zayn's courage, and his love for you, don't just have to be memories. They can guide your future. But only if you allow yourself to move forward. Ara felt her chest tighten again. Move forward. The words were simple, but terrifying. How could she move forward when her heart still ached? How could she embrace a life without Zayn when everything in her seemed frozen in his memory? She glanced at the letter one last time. It wasn't just words anymore. It was a gift. A key. A chance to rise from the pain and reclaim her life. Ara slowly folded the letter and placed it back in its envelope. Her hands were steadier now. Her breathing was calmer. Something inside her shifted, a small spark of hope in the darkness. Harris gave her a soft, approving nod. Take your time, he said. But don't stay trapped in the past. Zayn wouldn't want that for you. Not now. Not ever. Ara stood up and walked toward the window. The rain had stopped completely. Outside, the world was wet, glimmering in the dim streetlights. For the first time in months, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, the possibility of a new beginning. Her fingers tightened around the silver ring. She whispered softly, thank you, Zayn. For everything. For loving me, even in silence. And for the first time, she felt a small weight lift from her chest. The war inside her heart had not ended, but she could finally see a way to survive it, to carry her love and her grief, and one day, maybe, to turn it into something stronger, something beautiful. The night was quiet. But inside Ara, a storm had begun to settle, leaving a calm she hadn't known she could feel. Ara sat on the old wooden chair, the letter still clutched tightly in her hands. Her eyes were red, her cheeks wet, but her heart felt lighter than it had in months. Every word from Zayn seemed to echo in the quiet cafe, wrapping around her like a soft, invisible hug. She took a deep breath and read the letter again. This time, she read it slowly, carefully, letting every sentence sink in. Ara, if you're reading this, know that I never left because I stopped loving you. I left because I wanted you to live your life fully, without my pain dragging you down. You are strong, brighter than I could ever describe. Don't cry for me. Smile, even when it hurts. Love, love again, for both of us. Her lips trembled as she whispered the words aloud. The silence in the cafe seemed to hold her voice, giving it weight, giving it meaning. She felt as if Zayn was speaking directly to her soul, telling her that the pain she carried wasn't the end, it was the beginning of something new. Harris watched her quietly, giving her space. He knew this was her moment, the moment she would start to heal. He had seen the change already, the tension in her shoulders easing slightly, the grip on the silver ring loosening, her tears turning into something almost like relief. Ara folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table in front of her. She reached for the ring and held it in her palm. It felt different now, not heavy with loss, but warm with memory. She closed her eyes and let herself remember everything good, everything pure, everything she had shared with Zayn. Tears came again, but they were no longer just tears of sadness. They were tears of love, gratitude, and finally, acceptance. She whispered softly, "Thank you, Zayn, for loving me, for letting me see the truth. Even if it hurts, even if it took so long. I understand now." Harris nodded. "It's never easy," he said quietly. "But the truth always gives you a choice. You can carry the pain forever, or you can carry the love he gave you and use it to move forward." Ara's eyes opened, shining with something new, determination, strength, and a glimmer of hope. "I want to move forward," she said. "I don't want to be stuck in the past anymore. I want to live, really live. I want to be someone Zayn would be proud of." Harris smiled softly. That's exactly what he wanted. "And now, it's your turn to write your story." For the first time in months, Ara felt a sense of purpose. The heartbreak that had once consumed her was still there, but it no longer ruled her. She realized that Zayn's love had never truly left her, it had become a part of her, shaping her, teaching her, preparing her for the next chapter of her life. She looked around the cafe, at the empty tables, the dim light, the small traces of memories left behind. Everything seemed still, yet full of possibility. It was as if the place itself understood her transformation, quietly witnessing her rebirth from pain to strength. Ara stood up and took a deep breath. She walked to the window and looked outside. The rain had stopped completely, and the streets glimmered with reflections of the streetlights. The world felt alive, full of chances and paths she hadn't dared to see before. She held the ring tightly once more. "This isn't just a memory," she whispered. "It's a reminder. A reminder that love can hurt, but it can also heal. That even in loss, there's something beautiful waiting for me." Harris watched her, proud. "And it's your choice now," he said. "To live fully, to love fully, and to take every step forward with courage." Ara nodded. She could feel the weight of her past lifting. The letter, Zayn's words, and even Harris's presence had given her something she had thought was lost forever, hope. She took one last look at the letter, then carefully folded it and placed it in her bag. She wasn't discarding it. No, it was too precious for that. Instead, she carried it with her, close to her heart, as a guide, a source of strength, and a reminder of love's power. As she stepped out of the cafe, the cool night air greeted her like a gentle embrace. The world looked the same, yet everything felt different. The pain was still there, yes, but it had transformed into something she could live with. Something she could use to become stronger, braver, and more alive. She whispered one final time, to the empty streets, to the memory of Zayn, to herself. I will live. I will love. I will not let the pain define me. Thank you for teaching me that, Zayn. Thank you for loving me even when you couldn't stay. And with that, Ara walked into the night, her steps steady, her heart lighter, her spirit beginning to rise. For the first time in a long time, she felt ready to face the world. To heal. To grow. To find happiness again. The letter had not just given her answers. It had given her life. Ara walked through the city streets with a new kind of calmness. The rain had stopped completely, leaving the pavements glistening under the soft glow of the streetlights. The night air smelled fresh, like a world that had been cleansed, a world that now felt full of possibilities. For months, she had carried the weight of heartbreak. Zayn's sudden departure had left a hole in her life, a pain so deep that she had wondered if she could ever smile again. But now, after reading his letter, learning the truth, and understanding his sacrifice, something inside her had changed. She felt alive. It wasn't easy. The ache in her chest hadn't vanished completely. Memories of Zayn still lingered, the way he laughed, the warmth of his hand, the promises he made. But now, those memories were no longer chains keeping her trapped in the past. They were lessons, reminders of love's power and life's fragility. Ara reached the small community center she had started volunteering at. Helping others had always been a quiet dream, something she hadn't dared to pursue when her heart was heavy with grief. But now, she wanted to give back, to share the strength she had discovered, to turn her pain into purpose. She stepped inside, and a group of women looked up from their activities. Some were shy, some curious, some smiling. Ara felt a spark of hope as she greeted them. "Good evening, everyone," she said softly. They smiled back, some shyly, some warmly. And in that simple moment, Ara felt a connection she hadn't felt in months. She realized that helping others, sharing their struggles, and offering a hand was a way to honor Zayn's memory. Days passed. Weeks passed. And slowly, Ara found herself laughing again, genuine, full of life laughter. She shared stories, offered advice, listened, and learned. Every smile she received in return was a small victory, a reminder that life could still be beautiful. Harris continued to check on her, visiting sometimes to see how she was doing. At first, it had been awkward, both of them carrying pieces of Zayn's story, unsure of how to connect beyond the shared grief. But over time, a warm friendship grew between them. It wasn't love yet, not in the way Zayn had been her first love, but it was something steady, something comforting, something real. One afternoon, as they walked through a quiet park, Ara looked at Harris and smiled. "I never thought I'd feel this," she admitted. He nodded. "I know. But life has a way of giving us second chances, in friendship, in love, and in hope." Ara paused and touched the silver ring she always carried. It had been her anchor through the storm, her connection to the past, and now, a symbol of her strength. "I think I understand now," she said softly. "Love doesn't have to hurt forever. It can leave a mark, yes, but it can also teach us how to live. How to be brave." Harris smiled, silent, letting her words sink in. Weeks turned into months. Ara grew stronger, more confident, and more sure of herself. She started small projects at the center, organizing events, helping women learn skills to rebuild their lives. She even began to speak at local gatherings, sharing her story not as a tale of heartbreak, but as a story of hope, resilience, and triumph. And with every word she spoke, every life she touched, every smile she inspired, she felt Zayn's presence beside her. Not in pain, not in grief, but in the love and lessons he had left behind. One evening, after a long day at the center, Ara returned home. She sat by her window, looking at the stars shining brightly above. Her heart was calm, her mind clear. She held the silver ring in her hands and whispered softly. "Thank you, Zayn. You gave me the courage to live, to love, and to find my own strength." For the first time, she truly felt at peace. She realized that life was not about holding on to what was lost but embracing what was possible. Her past had shaped her, yes, but it no longer defined her. She had turned tragedy into triumph, heartbreak into hope, and loss into life. And in that moment, she made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to live fully. She would continue to love not just others, but herself. And she would carry Zayn's memory as a light, guiding her forward, not as a shadow holding her back. Days later, at the community center, Ara helped a young woman tie her scarf properly. The girl smiled at her, a mixture of gratitude and hope in her eyes. Ara smiled back, her heart full. Life was no longer about waiting for someone who had left. Life was about moving forward, embracing new beginnings, and finding strength in the most unexpected places. As she walked home that night, the city glowing softly around her, Ara felt a quiet joy rising within her. She had survived. She had grown. She had loved. And most importantly, she had learned that even after the darkest nights, the dawn always comes. Her steps were steady, her heart strong, her spirit alive. The story that began in heartbreak had ended in hope. And Ara was ready to embrace every moment, every challenge, and every new love that life would bring her way. She whispered one last time, to the night, to the stars, to Zayn's memory. "I will live. I will love. I will rise. Thank you, for everything." And with that, Ara stepped into her new life triumphant, fearless, and free.